Oh, excuse me.
Bring on the wrecking machine, setting your dreams of heaven on fire. Bring on the wrecking machine. Bring on the wrecking machine. Bring on the wrecking machine. Gonna ignite your every desire. Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city you burn, let it burn, let it burn, let it burn. For every city you burn, I'm gonna build one high.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is June 10th, YC127, and this is the Eve Universe Show! Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks, guys. How's it going? Hopefully that didn't peak the mic too much. Just checking. So, it is... What is this? It's Monday? Is it Monday or Tuesday? It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday! Alright, so today, first of all, I feel like every single video I start out by apologizing, but today I'm a bit discombobulated. I'm dealing with real life finances and stuff, trying to not get my power cut off. Problem is that they want me to pay by the 16th, and I don't get paid until the 21st. So I'm figuring that out. So I apologize. This was a couple minutes late, and also. I'm not quite as organized as I would have liked to have been. I still should be able to do all of the stuff that we were talking about doing today, although if we do not get to the missiles tutorial today, that might be fine, because it is, as I was looking at it, it is a pretty lengthy one. The problem is that it was going to be like missiles and other weapon systems, and missiles are, missiles, Vorton tuners, but then when I started to look at drones, I realized at the very minimum, I think drones should actually be its own video outright because, there's so many considerations when it comes to drones. It's not just the basic mechanics of combat, but there's also E-war drones. There's the different types of drones and how they relate to each other and how damage relates between them all. That made me think that should probably be its own category. So that way we don't end up... why am I numbered? I'm not a number. There's a new thing going on with chat where I think it's the people that chat the most or something like that get given a number based on their contributions to the chat. So like Malin, who likes to talk a lot, usually gets number 1. So I think, I'm not 100% sure how it works. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But even if we don't cover the reason why I'm hesitant to jump into the big guide today is because we do have a few other important pieces a couple of other important pieces of news to cover today. We have the MER from this last month, which is an interesting one. But also, Eve Frontiers. Yes, I know. Some of you love it, some of you hate it, but we will be talking about Eve Frontiers today and definitely tomorrow because, we got patch notes for the next version of Eve Frontiers, and those patch notes are public, which is pretty handy. But in addition to that, we now have officially gotten the news, so I can talk about it, that as of tomorrow, there is the new cycle for Frontiers. They're kind of, basically every so often they wipe the server because they're still building like core components of the game. So they're adding in a bunch of core components, and we'll be looking at those tomorrow. But more importantly, they're dropping the NDA tomorrow. So tomorrow will be my very first eFrontiers stream, where we will go and check out the new version of eFrontiers after, do you know if they'll do another free week? For what? For Eve or eFrontiers? I don't, they haven't mentioned doing a free eFrontiers thing yet. I honestly don't know. I haven't. So one of the unfortunate pieces is I haven't really been paying. The way that I deal with things like NDA is that I've been attempting to avoid any information that could be NDA'd. So a lot of their like streams and stuff that they've done that are for founders only, I haven't watched any of those really too much. I've gotten some information from people that I know, but so I'm not 100% sure if they've mentioned anything. If it's is it already free? You just need a beta, or do they just okay, I legitimately don't know a lot of these answers. I just know, so oof. We will talk about this in its own segment. But where is it? Where is it? Hold on. There it is. So as you can see here in the patch notes, it just simply says, as of 1400 UTC on the 11th of June 2025, the eFrontiers non-disclosure agreement will have been discontinued entirely. So as far as like who can access it or not, I would assume, since there's no information here otherwise, that it is going to be like only for founders. But we'll look into this more when we get to this topic. Oh gosh, the wizard is pulling into first place. I so don't understand how any of this works. I don't get how the chat leader. Hold on. I gotta know, guys. Let's find out. You guys like it when I do investigations online? Hold on. YouTube chat leader. Community engagement. Leaderboard. YouTube help. Leaderboard creates a fun, interactive, and rewarding environment for viewers to encourage ongoing engagement with their favorite creators. Aw, you're my favorite creator. No, I'm just kidding. It is visible during live streams and ranks viewers based on engagement with a given live stream. Leaderboard reflects and ranks each viewer's engagement in a live stream. Viewers earn points by actively engaging during the stream, and the leaderboard displays the audience ranking based on their total points. The more viewers engage, for example, via live chat messages, super chat, super stickers, or GIFs, the higher they may rank on the leaderboard. As viewers engage with a live stream, they'll notice the crown icon on the top left of the chat, which displays the cumulative points they've earned for engaging with that specific live stream. Clicking on this icon takes the viewers directly to the leaderboard to see the top 50 engaged viewers. The top 3 engaged viewers get a special badge next to their name. Can you opt out? You can turn off leaderboard participation in the live chat section of your YouTube settings. Is there anything I can do with the experience? No. How much is each eligible action worth? Are automatically calculated when a viewer sends a live chat at no cost or purchases a super chat, super sticker, or gift. Yeah, I know that. Of course, YouTube isn't going to tell us the exact rules for how it is done. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Are they resetting the servers? Says cycle starts in 19 hours and 50 minutes. Yes, they are wiping the server and starting over. Do we want to just jump into the E-Frontiers news first, since people are already talking about that? By the way, speaking of super chats and stuff, I do appreciate those, but because of my financial situation, if you're interested in donating to my PayPal, please message me on Discord. We'll get that sorted out so that way I can have. So basically, I need, as I talked to supporters this morning, I do need $150 to be able to pay for the power bill within the week. So we're working on that. I should be able to take care of it. But if you want to contribute and help out, please DM me in Discord. Otherwise, let's go ahead and jump into the real news of the day. We can go into the patch notes first, or we can go into the MER first. It's up to you guys. People seem to be interested in E-Frontier stuff first, because as soon as I mentioned it, people had 100 questions. MER from Malik. Okay. Let's see. Oh, also, while we're figuring that out, if anybody else has any wants to vote either way, but I did put out a couple of new videos. Well, not strictly new, but the finalized version of the turret guide is now released to everybody. People seem to have really liked it, which is one of my reasons why I was motivated to try to put together the missile video today, if we can get to it. But also, I put out the first part of that lore video. So the lore video we did a few weeks ago, that was right before the Drifter Crisis Climax, the Wrath of the Tyrannos event stuff. So it was like on the 5th or something like that, when the main thing kicked off on the 6th. I went through and we talked about all of the lore since the speed run. So, 2021, 2022 time period on, although I did start a little bit earlier, I think, for some of that. Because of if I remember correctly, what we did was we covered the 5 major groups: Amar, Mimitar, Kaldari, Edencom, Triglavian, yeah, that's it, and their relationship to the Drifters. Part 1 is mostly focused on the Deathless. It was the first hour and a half or so of that 8-hour video. That came out, I think I put that out yesterday. Part 2 will come out later this week. So make sure to check those out if you haven't. Looks like we've got one suggestion for MER, and that's it. So we're going to just go ahead and jump into the MER now. So let's get into the MER for May 2025. And I just realized I have not done what I normally do, which is come down here, open up the MER, and then pull up April's and March, just so we have something to compare against if we need to. So let's go ahead and begin. Now, this month is like, last month was the effects of the Revenant minor balance change, to this month we're seeing kind of the aftermath of all of that, the preparations towards war, because of course war is now live, and so we're going to look for clues as to the preparation for that. And in addition to that, we have, of course, the effects of Legion will start to being felt, I think, in this monthly economic report. But let's go ahead and look. Capsuleers, the monthly economic report for May 2025 is now available. Economic summaries: 9% increase in production, April versus May 2025. Mining and destruction are stable, which is crazy. So before we go into anything else, I want to say that my biggest takeaway is, if you look at this graph, okay? This graph goes back to 2019. We were talking before, when we, like, a couple of months ago, when we were talking about the mineral changes and the nullsec, people complaining about the cost of everything and blah, 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 blah. One of the things I was pointing out was, while, like, they were all talking about the mining and stuff, and we can see that there was a big bump in mining at that time, around that time, we see that basically production had ticked up to its highest point in recorded history since 2019. And look at that, we have gone up again. So this comment about it being a 9% increase in production, April versus May, that is on top of the fact that it was already at the highest level of production since 2019. And remember, 2019, so scarcity began in 2020. So we can see kind of this drop off here, right here. We can assume that this is somewhat close to when scarcity begins. In fact, yeah, because 2019, late 2019 was when scarcity really started to kick through. Actually, well, late summer of 2019 was the beginning of the chaos era, which was kind of the precursor to what would become the scarcity world, scarcity. So if you see this line up here at just above 5 trillion in 2019, that would be, we could consider that to be a fairly okay assessment of the amount of production that existed during the reign of the Roque Wall. And so when you compare that to now, you can see that like production is so much higher. So when people are talking about like the pre-reign of the Roque Wall or whatever, just realize that there is almost 40%, about 40% more production now than there was back before the reign of the Roque Wall. So now some of that might be because of prices increasing in the actual stuff itself, right? So as things become more expensive, with inflation, in theory, if people produced 40% more stuff, or sorry, if everything went up by 40%, then you could theoretically see a 40% boost to production without any actual production increase. However, that's not the case. We did see like big changes in 2020 for capital construction, but a lot of those changes now, like it hasn't been completely reverted, but they have been at least somewhat reverted. I don't know what the price of a carrier is at the exact moment. We could, hold on. I just pull up a Thanatos or something like that. Whoop. Pirate is up 300% from pre-scarcity, but that will be addressed on the 24th. Yeah. So the Thanatos is currently 4.5 billion ISK. So yeah, carriers are still probably at least twice as much as they were prior to scarcity. Although I would argue that not a lot of carriers are being produced right now compared to other things. Dreads have become significantly more reasonable compared to their scarcity days. And of course, I'm pretty sure they just made Titans cheaper a little bit. But more importantly, they've also like added the effectiveness to it. But the point here is the actual cost of the ships of the line, like cruisers, battle cruisers, they are not that much more expensive just in ISK than they were in pre-scarcity. In fact, I would argue that especially for smaller the smaller the ship, the more likely that it is as cheap, if not cheaper, than it was during scarcity. Because one of the things that like people talk about during the industry, or one of the things that people don't talk about during the industry changes during scarcity, was that basically everything battlecruiser down was made cheaper to produce, or at least more streamlined to produce, where everything battleship and above did get made a bit more expensive, which admittedly, it's also worth noting, just for full disclosure, that, obviously capitals and super capitals and stuff like that end up being a huge portion of the indice, because a single super carrier is worth, thousands or tens of thousands or whatever. I haven't even done the math. Just a ridiculous amount of frigates and cruisers for one super carrier worth of value. So bear that in mind. But the point of the matter is that we see this big bump in scarcity. And I will say that this last 9%, or not scarcity, but production, this last 9% bump is not because everything just got 9% more expensive in the last, whatever. In fact, things have arguably, when we look at the indices, we'll see that the prices have gotten cheaper. And yet production has gone up in alignment with, as it was pointed out earlier in chat, the mining spiked up and has stayed very high since the Revenant miner update, and that has fueled additional production. But my bet is that a fair chunk of this production is going to be the preparations for war, because we got the announcement of war the last, what was it, a week or two ago? But if you don't, goons didn't just suddenly decide, Asher didn't wake up 2 weeks ago and be like, you know what, let's do a war, right? Behind the scenes, I'm sure that goons knew that they were going to go to war for a while, and their production had been spooled up as a way of, preparing for that. And so I think that we're going to see that here, especially since you can see that, the lion's share of the increase is from nullsec, right? This is proportional, so not absolute. So basically, assuming that everywhere else in space has the same production, you can see this big cut out of all of the different areas of space towards nullsec. So this is the lion's share of this 9% bump comes from nullsec production. They knew what they wanted to go to war since before the move. It's why they moved. Yeah, well, yeah, that's honestly a fair point, and probably very true. All right. It also says the MPI continues to fall, so the mineral price index continues to fall, but at a much slower rate than in April. So again, the production is going up while the minerals are getting cheaper. Right? It's likely that we're going to remove the import, export, and trade balance plots from the MER due to data sources being deprecated. We are working on with the development team to get a new data source that will give us more verbose data, enabling us to better calculate imports, exports, and trade balance. You can download all the raw data used in the report here. Each image can be enlarged by clicking on it. So a couple things about this. First of all, I'm personally not too concerned about... By the way, before I get any deeper, I want to point out that CCP, I think it was Okami, had a stream with Oz, who's one of the bigger market analysis guys, over the weekend. I have intentionally not watched that video because I want to come to my own conclusions, as bad as they may be, by looking at this. But I do encourage you to, after you watch this, go and watch that video to find out all the different ways I'm wrong. Or if you want to throw out contributions, that's fine too. You can call me wrong live. That's fair. But so my thoughts about this, first of all, the import, exports, and trade balance plots are fun to look at when it comes to these monthly check-ins on the MER, but they're not overly useful to me when looking at the MER, just because they move around a lot, and sometimes you can get some useful information where it's like, oh look, here's a bunch of people, this is the move, as people attack into areas or move from one region to another or whatever. But a lot of it is noise. But the other thing is that I actually am hopeful about this solely because of FanFest. So if we remember, during FanFest, one of the big things that they're working on this year, the biggest thing, in my opinion, that they're working on this year is back-end data analysis and capturing and ESI improvements. The ESI being the API system that allows people to see things outside of game, and the map, right? So I believe that the reason why these tools are being deprecated is because the tools that are being used to make these MERs was built in a somewhat hodgepodgey kind of way by several of the devs. Mostly, I think it was CCP Quant and his guys kind of worked on this stuff and then handed it over to CCP Larrikin. But, like, they were built for purpose because they wanted to be able to visualize the data, and that purpose was not as robust as what they're wanting to do in the near future. So I assume that this is being deprecated primarily because they're working on new data visualization in the map, in the API, etc. So, you know, I'm going to tentatively be hopeful that this is actually, like, while it may seem like bad news that they're just removing features from the MER, I personally see this as a good sign for their development of back-end stuff. Either way. Key economic figures by region. We're going to look at Pochfin as usual. We've got 2.9 trillion in destruction, whereas last month we had 1.8. Wow. And the month before that, we had 2.1. And that's it. So, like, destruction last month in Pochfin was very high compared to previous months. At least a third, if not, 30% increase, if not double. The destruction. Mining has moved to 0.19 from 0.13, so mining is also up. And yeah. So that's good. I wonder why cough cough salvage. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because the salvage, I don't know how much, well, so the dread site in Pochfin is Edencom. So all of the Edencom rats, all of the rats in that site are going to be Edencom. There are Triglavian, like, trig sites to run, especially or there are trig rats that spawn in Pochfin. Obviously, we went and checked them out, but the majority of the trig salvage is going to be happening on the other side of the wormhole, outside of Pochfin. Although it could be people killing people that are trying to zip around in Pochfin, but, like, I mean, most of the people doing that, as like myself, were in, like, magnates or whatever. So you could kill literally an infinite number of magnates and not change the destruction value. So we're going to look at the other numbers, like the amount that people are being paid out from Triglavian invasions. It could be people running the World Arc site. Those do have trig rats that have trig salvage. But this seems to imply, but that also doesn't explain the additional mining. Unless all of this stuff, when it comes to what this could represent, honestly, is pro-trig people being brought into, or being like activated in the game, right? Because they haven't, there's probably a lot of people that have operated in Pochfin, have been pro-trig, that have kind of gone AFK away from the game for a while, and the events of the Drifter Crisis might have brought them back to the game, and now that they're back, they're more active in Pochfin, doing everything, including killing people and mining. That's an explanation. You know, we see, like, it could be that the pro-Pochfin or pro-Triglavian Pochfin groups have been just more active because of all of the new interest and the Baba Raga and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know that one for sure. I don't have any reason, or I don't have any like independent information. NPC bounties, hold on. That's actually another good one to check out. Pochfin, NPC bounties, really, that's super low. Is that real? 0.01 trillion. So 10 billion ISK total for the entire month for all bounties in Pochfin? Is that consistent? Let's just check. Yep. Yeah, 0.0 trillion. You know, I would have thought that there would be at least some bounties, because there are bounties on the rats, right? Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely bounties on the rat. But I guess it is true that the majority of the payout is in I could have sworn that Trig and Eden well, at the very least, hold on. Do the sleeper rats have bounties? Does the... Maybe they don't. Maybe the World Arc rats don't have bounties either. I don't know. That's weird. Hadn't really thought of that one before. All right. But let us continue. Asteroid mining, or asteroid ore mined over time. So when was... Hold on. Before we go any further, let's just go ahead and double check. First of all... Oh, I typed in minor update, major update, Eve. Just so we get our timeline set up correctly. So the Revenant major update was on January, February, March. Halfway through March. So we see here, there's March. Yep. So this spike, just to be 100% clear, does represent the Revenant major update. And so we can see that it has remained pretty consistent. There's a little bit of a dip. Interestingly enough, if there's anything, we can see, like, as we see this dip, there's a little bit of an increase in high sec. And I think that the reason why you see this increase in high sec and a little bit of a dip in null sec at the very end is because it has become apparent that pyrite and stuff is the main focus. Now, what's interesting is that this seems to be less to do with the actual economics of what's really going on and more about what is being talked about, right? Because, you know, back when people were kind of complaining that there isn't enough to mine, we see this, especially like as people were getting more and more grumpy about it. And as CCP, or we see this actual decline in mining. And then right when CCP Okami announces that there will be changes coming during the major update, we see this even further dip in mining. And then as soon as the major update comes out, boom, big spike in mining, right? And then, you know, now that people are talking about the high sec ore, which remember, pyrite has been a bottleneck since way back here. But now people are actually paying attention to that, so we're seeing a little bit of an uptick there as CCP's been talking about how they're going to fix, or at least do something about the pyrite situation, especially in high sec. And so it's very possible that, like, people are yes, Gizmo, we are. So basically, I wish I had this pulled up, but CCP Okami said that they're very happy with the major update and what it has done. However, one of the big things that they pointed out was pyrite continues to be a bottleneck, just like I've been talking about, but that they want to address it by tackling high sec. And now they've announced that it is in fact, I believe, coming next week, right? So what I think happened was that the general population heard, hey, pyrite is too expensive right now. We will fix it soon. And that is causing people to be like, oh, pyrite's worth more. And like, because if people are just mindlessly doing whatever they're doing, the reality of the situation doesn't really matter, right? If you just, like, actually, this is a good example. Yesterday, we were doing a belt mining fleet, And, everybody just kind of instinctively started mining the Veldspar, right? Until we pointed out to them that right now, Veldspar is kind of the lowest of the high-sec materials. It's usually the highest. And almost every other point in the game, Veldspar has been the best ore to mine in high-sec. But because of all of the changes, because of the changes in nullsec when it comes to mining availabilities, and because of the different bottleneck changes with the Revenant Major update, this has caused everything but Veldspar to go up in value because that pyrite and to a lesser extent Mexilon is worth too much at the moment. So things like Scordite and Plagioclast is actually higher than Veldspar, just pound for, or, M3 amount. But, like, unless you are sitting there and paying attention and checking these things every single time you mine, which most people aren't, you don't know that. And so we had most of our people that were just defaulting to mining Veldspar until they get told otherwise. And so by CCP Okami posting this update about his assessment of the Revenant Major update and mentioning the fact that pyrite and whatnot is still too high, that probably told people that weren't otherwise paying attention that that's where the money is at the moment. And so, we see this little uptick there as people are attempting to get stuff to market prior to the prices coming down because of the changes. That's my thought. What's yours? You go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. But either way, mining ore by region. We see Amencia, Fountain, Paragon Falls, Impasse, Vale of the Silent, with the highest at 6 billion. If we come down here to last month, Paragon Falls, Impasse, Amencia, Vale of the Silent, 6 billion. Are these hold on. These are close enough that April, May. Yeah, nope. These are the same. These are two different charts. Hold on. Yeah, these are really similar. Like, compared to this one where everything's down by a full billion. I mean, it's still Amencia is number one. Amencia, Impasse, Paragon Fall, Vale of the Silent. Still the same top four. Well, no, because Fountain's now higher. Vale of the Silent's now lower. But in general, like, we don't see terrible amount. Well, let's see. Paragon Falls, Amencia, or Impasse, Amencia, Vale of Silent. Amencia, Fountain. So Fountain comes out of nowhere. Hold on. Fountain is, well, Fountain's 5th place. So Fountain goes from 4 billion to 5 billion. Overall, I see like this. Let's see. Yeah, mining has ticked down a little bit. And we can see that the mining portion by security ban, you can see that a lot of the change overall is that high sec increase, which represents a null sec decrease. So that's likely what we're seeing in these charts too. Howdy. Yeah, I am also curious as to what June is going to look like because of the war. But I feel like every single time we do one of these, I'm always like, I wonder what it's going to look like next time because of what's currently going on. So, yeah. Gas mined over time. Gas continues to go up pretty steadily since the Revenant Major update. Now, this is very likely, and it looks like it's kind of across the board. Obviously, less in high sec, because there isn't that much gas to be mined in high sec, but we see an increase in low sec in particular gas with some wormhole gas, because you got to look at the slopes. Like this slope is like this slope is like this, so it's a little bit in null sec, and then this slope is like this, so more in wormhole space. So I'd assume that like wormhole space and low sec has seen the biggest increase, which makes sense because both of them, I believe, are useful in capital and super capital production. So yeah, pyrite is pyrite is crazy right now. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like, one of the biggest problems though is that pyrite is both expensive and hard to move and sell, right? One of the biggest problems is that people need pyrite and there's a shortage on pyrite, but at the same time, where people are mining the pyrite isn't where people need the pyrite. So we're having a bit of a logistical issue when it comes to pyrite. So people like people that are selling the pyrite are noticing that it's hard to actually move the stuff, like as in sell it. But at the same time, pyrite has gone from 25. Hold on. Whoop. There we go. Pyrite has gone from 10 ISK per unit to 25 ISK per unit. So it's funny. All right, hold on. Let's look at scordite. Scordite. We have is it massive? Condensed. Yeah, scordite has gone from 15 ISK per unit, give or take, or I guess I could say 16 ISK per unit to 27 ISK per unit. What is glossy? I know one of these is like, yeah, that one's probably the garbage one. Massive has gone from 18 ISK per unit to 29 ISK per unit. In Metropolis, it's almost 34 ISK per unit. That is wild. And yeah, for pyrite, that's crazy. Why is this being weird? There we go. Yeah, pyrite has... Oh, shit, I didn't even have the whole year. God damn it. Yeah, it is... And you can actually see in the latest chunk, like, it's still going up. You know, if we look at the market data right now, pyrite is going for 33 ISK per unit on sell orders and 31 ISK per unit in buy orders. So, yeah, that's pretty crazy. But again, remember, next week is going to be the mining changes. So be advised, there's a pretty decent chance that we're going to see a crash, honestly, in the next few days, because it's not even going to be a matter of when the patch comes out. It's going to be a matter of, oh, is it 2 weeks? Okay, 2 weeks. But it's not going to matter when the patch comes out as much as it's going to matter when the details of the patch are announced. So I don't know if that's going to happen in the next week or 2 weeks, whether or not they're going to do it right beforehand or whatever. Who knows? Anytime CCP, Okami, or somebody else could just post it in Discord, and then it'll be on Reddit, and then everybody will know. And that's one of the things that we can really look at when it comes to the MER this week, this month, and kind of think about the fact that it isn't so much the reality of the economics as much when it comes to, especially when it comes to resource extraction. People are going to do what they know. So it's about what is known. So as soon as Okami announces something, or there's a big Reddit post about it, or whatever, like, that's the kind of thing that actually alters the, makes bigger swings on the market. Right now, zeolites are the largest source for pyrite. Let's see Zeo. Let's see how Zeo's doing. Brimful zeolites. Now, zeolites come from moons. Yeah, we can see a year ago, zeolites were 1,700 ISK per unit, and now they are 3K ISK per unit. So yeah, that's a pretty big difference. Glistening. Hey, Ashived. Oh, cool. Yeah, I do want to point out. Thank you for being here, Ashived. Ashived, friend of the show. Let me pull this up real quick. Ashived, who's a friend of the show, has been active again recently. He's been doing a playthrough of EVE Online series recently, so worth checking those out. Maybe we could watch a little bit of it in a little bit, but we've got a lot to get to today, so I did want to bring that up. Shit, I didn't show you guys. Here we go. Here's Ashiv's YouTube channel. So make sure to check that out. I will post it in the chat. Boom. But let's go ahead and get back to what we were talking about. Hey, Dutch. So yeah, it's my fault that you came back. I'm glad about that. What did you miss? We're looking at the MER today. So glistening zeolites, I would assume, is going to be the biggest one. Glistening zeolites. Here's the fun thing about glistening. We just had a blue plop, so we were just talking about this. Basically, I think it's 1 out of every 13 times that the moon pops. Like okay, let me take a step back. Zeolites come from moons, not from asteroids. Okay, that's a different thing on the MER. It's actually down here. Nope, that's ice. It's actually here, the moon materials. But so zeolites are high-sec moons provide, or rather R4 moons, which all high-sec moons and all wormhole moons are R4 moons, provide zeolites, bitamins, and a couple of others that provide the, if we go here, there's atmospheric gases, and atmospheric gases goes into these different pieces, and these pieces end up with the 4 different R4 components. Man, hold on. We can go to my infographics chart on R4 reactables. Now, the numbers here are probably not going to be accurate anymore, if I remember correctly. But you can see here, so you've got silicates, hydrocarbons, atmospheric gases, and evaporate deposits, which come from the 4 different moon materials. And those go into all of the stuff that takes to make auto integrity preservation seals, life support backup units. Hey, Sheesh07, thank you for that 5 gifted memberships, as well as core temperature regulators for battleships and capital core temperature regulators for supercarriers. Life support backup units and auto integrity preservation seals are used for trig ships. I'm pretty sure still use them. Is it no space? Life support. Life support backup units. Yeah, still go into battleships, faction ships, so pirate ships. Is it trig ships? Hold on. I guess not. No, yeah, Vedmak. There it is. So yeah, all pirate ships, Navy ships, and like Eden Com and trig ships take life support backup units and auto integrity preservation seals. And then, of course, Battleships require a core temperature regulator, and supercarriers require, or super capitals require, or battleships require a core temperature regulator. Capitals require a capital core temperature regulator. So all that stuff comes from that R4 moon material. But about half of the material. Oh yeah, I can link the infographic notion, or in the notion. Boom, linked. Yeah, I made this infographic a while ago. Like I said, the numbers are not going to be right anymore, but I believe that the materials are all still the same. I should probably update this. But also, just since you are looking at this, if you are being exposed to this, one thing I do want to point out is that these colors here are the fuel block type that are required for making these reactions, right? So Galente fuel blocks for thermosetting polymer and oxy-organic solvent, AMAR for carbon polymers, Minmatar for carbon fiber, and Caldari for sulfuric acid. Yeah. Either way, the point is, somewhere, the point is that these zeolites are required for not just, or zeolites, as well as all of the R4 moon materials, are mostly mined for the reactions, for the R4 reactions, for those purposes. However, if we look at the actual zeolites themselves, we see that a fair chunk of it is pyrite and mexilon, not just atmospheric gases. So this is why that weird dichotomy with, or that weird like situation when it comes to pyrite and mexilon has always kind of been there for the last several years, which is that, you know, there are extreme shortages of pyrite and mexilon in places, especially non-HiSec places, because they're mostly found in HiSec, and mostly people in HiSec are mining things like Veldspar, because tritanium is so hard to move. So compressed Veldspar ends up being a really good way of getting tritanium, which everybody needs in a lot of. But that means that most of the time, pyrite and mexilon kind of gets left behind. And this has been sort of okay because the people who mine the moons get tons of pyrite and mexilon as slag. But that makes that pyrite and mexilon harder to move around, because unlike tritanium, where Veldspar is 100% tritanium, if you're trying to move this stuff into pyrite and mexilon, then it's like less than half of the material is what you actually want it to be, and the rest of it is stuff that isn't necessarily useful to you unless you're doing other things too. So it's a bit bulkier to move. But so we end up with people with tons of pyrite and mexilon as effectively slag from doing their moon mining, and then you have a ton of people that need pyrite and mexilon, but it's kind of a bit of a challenge to get these two people kind of linked up, and has been. And then when they introduced Metanox moon drills, we can see that a lot of the R4 material has gone to metanoxes. Now, the key to metanoxes is that they end up, not only do they have additional costs in the form of the Skyhook lava fuel, I think, but also the metanoxes don't provide the minerals. They only provide the reactables. So if you were to put it, if you had a moon that has 100% zeolites and you put a metanox on it, the only thing that's going to come out of it is the atmospheric gases. The pyrite and the mexilon is effectively destroyed. It's not actually destroyed because it's never produced, but the potential of getting that pyrite and mexilon from those zeolites ends up being destroyed. You just get the reactable. So one thing that is worth noting is that, like, from March to May, we do actually see kind of a noticeable dip. In the percentage of R4 moons that are being mined versus metanoxed. Now, this could probably be because metanoxes are overall, like they've made metanoxes more expensive and more difficult to maintain. So that makes them less valuable. And so you can see actually there's slight dips on almost every one of the metanoxes, but in the form, like look at R8s. R8s can spawn in other places besides HiSec, and we see this big dip in not only how much is being metanoxed, but also the absolute amount being mined as well. So that we just have less R8 moons being mined now than we did a little bit ago, closer to, November of last year. Whereas with this, we do see a little bit of a dip, and we do see a little bit of a dip in the amount that's being mined. But if you're asking me, and I'm just eyeballing it, it looks like the dip of the green is a little bit more noticeable than orange. So I wonder how much of this is because people are like compensating, like R4 moons. First of all, I don't know where. I assume that a large chunk of the R4 moons that are being metanoxed are either in wormhole space, where they don't want to bother to have to mine their own moon, but they want the materials from it because they can do the reactions there, or nullsec, where like the empires usually, or the alliances care about the big expensive moons like the R64s, and probably allow just individuals to put on their own metanox drills on moons. So those are the guys that are going to be deciding to no longer drill their moons, probably. And so a lot of that dip comes from there. But my question is, how much of that's being compensated by people mining moons in HiSec? Do we have like a mining moons mining moons by region? We could probably look into this a little bit, but I wish we had a little bit more of a breakdown of like HiSec, nullsec, lowsec in the moon mining source. But either way, if we go back to the compressed zeolites, one of the things I find fun, glistening, the reason why glistening is so valuable is because, as I said, once out of every 13 or so moon pops, regardless of the moon's duration in its extraction, will give you a crit moon pop, which is also known as like a blue pop because it's like a blue flash. And then everything is going to be glistening. So if we look at glistening zeolites versus even brimful zeolites, so we've got compressed zeolites, compressed brimful zeolites, and compressed glistening zeolites. So normal zeolites are... Oh, that's not great for you guys. There we go. Down. So here we have pyrite goes from 8,000 units to 9,200 units. What is that? Like a 20% increase? I don't know. Hold on. $8,000 divided by 9,200. Nope, hold on. 9,200 divided by 8,000. 15% increase. Malin is on it. So, zeolites, brimful zeolites is a 15% increase, but glistening zeolites compared to normal zeolites is double, right? So 8,000 units to 16,000 units. 400 mexilon to 8,000 or 800 mexilon, and 65 atmospheric to 130 atmospheric. So the point here is that, again, the value of compressed stuff is because of how easy it is to move. And so if I'm going to move material, I'm going to want to move the most material for my M3. So all things being equal, which we can see that the volume is equal between the two, if I'm going to buy a bunch of zeolites in order to buy pyrite or atmospheric gases or whatever, to move the nullsec, for example, I would definitely do glistening basically exclusively, right? You just get twice as much material for your jump fuel. This is not just a matter of less of a pain in the ass. This is making it so that your fuel costs for this is less. So we can see that like compressed zeolites are worth roughly, well, let's just go look at market data. 3,000 ISK per unit, where glistening is worth 6,500 ISK per unit. So there's a little bit of a premium on the glistening stuff because it's not just, you would think that double the material, double the value, but it has an additional value in the fact that it is a more compressed version of the material. So it's going to be worth a little bit more than just double. All right, well, let's see. Where were we? Almost double plus 10%. Yeah, almost a 10% markup. And again, that's a natural. There's nothing that makes it that way. This is just the Eve market being the Eve market. Okay, so we did asteroids. We did gas. Where's gas being mined? Iridia, 35 million to, yeah, basically about, these charts look so similar. Lone Trek to Lone Trek, derelict to derelict. Yeah, so gas has basically been kind of an increase across the board. It hasn't really shifted around very much. It's just there's more interest in mining gas, so it's gone up. Still worth it to pay the 10% to save on fuel costs of jumping it? Yes, absolutely. And then ice mined over time. This big spike here is the winter event. So we can see that kind of things have gone back to normal. It's a little bit higher than it was before. That could be an additional need for fuel for reactions as production is going up. Because remember, especially the stuff that's being produced right now, those capitals and super capitals and battleships and stuff, all of which have gotten either buffed or had their costs reduced, has led to an increase in their production and therefore an overall increase in the gas mining over the previous kind of average. Gas from wormholes have been demand. I've sold through 500 FTL links in one day. The war seems likely culprit. Definitely has motivated me to build more and mine more wormhole gas. Yeah, exactly. And again, like I said, the things that have been buffed and the things that have been made. I love how the only thing that's worth mining in low sec is gas. Are you what? Hold on. What? That can't be right. I mean, Isogen. Hold on. Well, I mean, there's that. Although we do see an increased demand on isogen, especially now that the production has increased. But then also, what is the other one? Megasite? Is it Megasite? What is the other one? Megasite? No, Noxium. Yeah, I guess you're right. Well, I think, would you say that it's the only thing? That seems, don't get me, like, I appreciate your feedback, but that's the kind of statement that always raises a red flag with me, like any always, nevers, onlys, those sorts of things. It'd be interesting to evaluate, again, what low-sec mining is worth versus high-sec mining. I imagine it's still valuable. It's still dangerous, but it is absolutely, I don't mean by value. I mean, when you see the graph of what people are doing, that's okay. Yep. That's fair. I think that big chunk of that has to do with, yeah, because you see this big increase in gas. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That the vast majority, in fact, you could argue that, yeah, it looks like actually mining has decreased in low sec, where gas mining has increased in low sec. That there could be various reasons for that. I think that a big portion of that is, yeah, as gas becomes more in demand, which it clearly has, if I'm going to be mining in low sec, like low sec gas mining and low sec ore mining are in basically direct conflict with each other. And for various reasons, yeah, gas mining is a little bit easier to do and more useful, or more valuable. So, you know, I'm just saying, like, there aren't that many people that are like, I only mine ore and I won't mine gas, or I only mine gas and I won't mine ore, right? Like, your mining is mining, and you're going to go after the thing that gives you the best results. So it's easy for people to shift from, from basically an increase in gas mining in low sec will almost always come with a reduction in ore mining in low sec, because those activities are performed largely by the same people, right? You know, we could compare. This isn't necessarily the same for high sec mining versus gas mining, because, you know, obviously there's going to be people that are unwilling to do low sec gas mining, but are willing to do high sec mining for long periods of time. But if you're going to do low sec mining, gas mining versus ore mining are in direct conflict with each other for your time, like in competition for your time. So that makes sense. That tracks. So I think that that's probably the vast majority of what we're seeing here. Sometimes the less risk is a better option for mining. I mean, it's a lot of the time the better. I mean, I've said before that low sec mining is really great, and I recommend people do it, especially as a group, because it's a totally different kind of experience, but it's designed to reward vigilance, right? I mean, to a certain extent in high sec, you need to be paying attention for gankers to show up or whatever. But like, if you can pay attention and you know, keep your wits about you, you can usually mine in low sec pretty good, either gas or ore. But it does absolutely reward vigilance. For in the same amount of time as high sec mining, you will make a lot more money, but you got to pay attention. Even a momentary lapse of your focus could theoretically cost you, you know, disaster. So that is one of the things I really like about low sec mining. Pochvin counts too. Pochvin counts too. In fact, I recommend Pochvin as, that's actually honestly, that's probably the real thing, right? If you aren't going to go after gas mining, and if you are going to mine, like, remember, we saw a big increase. Pochvin isn't here, but if we go back here, we can see from the key economic figures, Pochvin had a pretty big increase month over month for how much was being mined. So if you, it's actually, it has null and low sec ores. Yeah, it has the best ores in the game, and Pochvin is safer than low sec mining, period. So as people figure that out, I would assume that people will shift from low sec to Pochvin. Honestly, unless people live in low sec, like faction warfare guys or whatever, who might mine in the area just for funsies or to set up a trap or whatever, like, all things being equal, I'm running a mining group and we want to figure out where we're going to get the more valuable stuff. I would probably put more focus into mining in Pochvin than in low sec right now, That's actually an easy one. Like between the two, I would choose Pochfin every single time. Pochfin sites are dead space. The ores are up to 200 kilometers away from the beacon. So if you set them up correctly, Pochfin is significantly safer than Losec, even if it doesn't have local, even if it doesn't, you're separated from known space or whatever. There is a bit of a pain in the ass when it comes to getting the materials out of Pochfin. Don't get me wrong, there's an extra consideration. Although I would argue that there's probably an extra consideration in Losec as well. It's just a different way of exercising that consideration. Jump freighters versus, sneaking things in and out via the wormholes with like normal transportation ships or whatever. But yeah, I think that both of those are going to be big factors as to why Losec mining is not as popular at the moment. Let's see. What else can we draw out of this? What else can we talk about? Ice mined over time. We looked at that, right? Yep. Moon mining over time. We looked at that. Veil of the Silent went from 1.6 trillion to 1.2 trillion. Oh no, Veil of the Silent fell to second place, below 1.2 trillion, above with Catch above it. Catch went from what? What's going on in Catch? Who's Catch? Catch went from $500 billion in April. Is that goons? Are goons just everywhere? To 12 trillion. What? And almost exclusively through Metanoxes. That doesn't, that almost doesn't make sense with any of the other numbers. You would think that big of a spike on the number one thing would also be seen somewhere here, but we're seeing dips. How do you, this is where CCP is really unique and difficult challenge. How do you make each key area, low sec, high sec, null sec, wormhole, have unique opportunities with proper risk to reward issues? Not really easy. Yeah. And more importantly, here's the thing. Here's the other half of that, Demorhedron. It's an excellent point, but also remember that that answer isn't static, right? When we talk about balancing things for CCP, you got to remember that there is no such thing as a correct answer. Or more importantly, if there is a correct answer, that correct answer does not last for a period of time, because the problem is that the interesting thing is change itself, right? So regardless of the balance between things, on a long enough timeline, that balance will become stale, and so things have to be changed around. So at any given time, there could be an imbalance. Like right now, theoretically, you could argue there's an imbalance towards high sec, a slight one, but like the only constant is change. They also catch is where do they do the moon sig and mine out its crazy amount of moons on one weekend, right? But hold on, change is the only constant in the universe, as the saying goes. Yes. When you throw lore and events into the mix, it's even tougher. Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why lore and events are so critical to Eve, because they create momentary spikes in interest in all kinds of different things that may be more unpredictable and provide opportunities and challenges for people that want to stay on the bleeding edge of things. So, but again, okay, hold on. Let's just go look 1 month back and see whether or not. Okay, yeah, never mind. So catch goes from 1.4 trillion to nothing to 1.2 trillion in like 2 months. So that, okay, fine. It isn't as weird, although it does look weird. And I'd love to see how these numbers relate to each other. I just find it wild that like, because remember, so some of you guys are saying like, nah, I mean, Punch, go ahead and stay. The thing about these graphs are this isn't Goons doing a roach fleet or something like that, because the vast majority of this mining is metanoxes. So these would, in theory, be people dropping metanoxes, because metanoxes should, unlike the normal moon mining, which can spike based on when people are mining, like metanoxes just continually convert and produce the material. So this really feels like, is it? Am I wrong? Fuck. Okay, never mind. Can we just delete the last 10 minutes of this conversation? And that makes so much more sense. Of course, because here, okay. Yep, we're good. Nope, everything you guys have been saying makes sense now. Everything I've been saying for the last 10 minutes has been bullshit. That's fine. We're good. Thanks, Malik. No, that makes so much more sense. No, now it makes sense. Because, yeah, you would see the big spike there. I had it backwards. We're fine. We're fine. Everything's fine. How are you? Okay. Let's continue. Is there anything else that's valuable? So this is the chart that's going to be going away soon. And this is what I mean by the fact that it is kind of more difficult to parse, because it's listed by, yeah, good job, Punch. It's listed by who exports the most. So, and of course, you know, every area has both imports and exports. So a small shift can like be a big change on this graph. So it's a little bit harder to interpret and find something cool out of it. So that's why I'm not that upset that this chart is going away. But what we can see is that there's a lot of stuff leaving Innsmother, which makes sense, and Lone Trek, and are moving towards the Forge and Ethereum Reach. Now, let's see. The Forge went from 37 trillion import to 40 trillion import, with Ethereum Reach going from 8 trillion net to 45 trillion net. And that's what I think is crazy about this, is that, like, so the Forge, which has this big thing because it has a small deficit, well, I mean, comparatively, whereas this much smaller totals has a bigger deficit. I assume that Innsmother out, Ethereum Reach in, like, that smells like war to me, right? I'm sure Sugar wants to watch my stream. Hi, Sugar. Like the stream for Sugar. All right, so yeah. ISKs versus faucets. Here we get some more information, like bounty prizes go from $41 trillion to $42 trillion. So I'd call that pretty stable. We can look at main bank auto payments to compare that to, and that goes from 21 trillion to 22 trillion. So pretty much on par. So it looks like ratting is slightly up, but is basically stable. Compare that to 2 months ago. It's still down from 2 months ago. If I remember correctly, there was a pretty big uptick when all the changes went down. Wait, nope. Yeah, it's actually down quite a bit, because it was 46 trillion, and now it's down at 42 trillion. In fact, commodity market remains higher than bounties, which is actually kind of nuts because there hasn't been an event. Well, I mean, I guess there's the end of the previous event still, but, you know, commodities usually come from events. Sancha incursions go from 18.9 to 19.4. So a little bit of an increase in Sancha incursions. Baba farming, but those don't have bounties. Not serious ones. And it won't affect the ESS main bank auto. Unless you're talking about like people raising money for Babas. I don't know about that, man. Like, they're kind of popular, but I don't know how popular they are amongst nullsecers. I think this is just straight up ratting. Just people wanting to make money. Now, here's the interesting one. Triglavian invasions goes from 6.8. Oh, got it. Yeah, an increase in the Abyss, an increase in trig salvage or trig ratting would involve an increase in commodities. We'll look at the commodities when we get there. So Triglavian invasions go from 6.8 to 8.6. That's kind of fun. So yeah, we do actually see a 30% increase in Triglavian invasions payouts. And that's going to be both some of the stuff going on in Pochvin, which of course, you know, more people running those bigger sites in Pochvin means potentially more destruction, which matches what we saw in the destruction chart. But also, one of the things I found out was that there is actually a payout for finishing the wormholes and stuff. So any like hunting for trig salvage will produce Triglavian Invasion Corporation reward payouts, as far as I know. So there's that. Yeah, well, this doesn't count the DEDLP. This is just an ISK payout. And then agent missions go from 3.6... Wait. Yeah, 3.6 to 4.2. So more people missioning. Insurance payouts, 4.9 to 4.8. So actually less insurance payouts, which, if we go up to the top again, we see that destruction is trending up, but not like ridiculously. And is more or less stable. Let's see. What is yellow? Oh. We do see an uptick in losses in Pochvin / wormhole Abyss. I wonder if how much of this is people running the Abyss more and losing ships potentially. Not just Pochvin. Let's see. What else? Okay. ISK versus, top 6 commodity faucets over time. So here we go. Overseer's personal effects are up. That's going to be a weird one. Like, we see ups in both Overseer effects and Triglavian data. This big spike in Triglavian data, like almost unprecedented since April of last year. This big spike in Triglavian data is almost like is going to be that big, either people running the Abyss more or people running Triglavian wormholes, people running the Triglavian dreads in Edencom systems, and people running the World Arc sites in Pochvin. We actually see a dip in rogue drone analysis data. So people running less crab beacons as nullsec becomes more dangerous. Although I did see there's a post, deep flow rifts. Yeah, but I don't consider deep flow rifts a major source. And furthermore, deep flow rifts would have been a source for almost the last year now. So if anything, the supply of Triglavian data out of deep flow rifts. First of all, does deep flow rifts even give you Triglavian data sheets? But yeah, so I did see that Asher was running crab beacons in Horde staging system, which was pretty good. That's pretty good meme. This boost to Overseer's personal effects is somewhat confusing to me. My only guess is like what I think that we're seeing in a few places here, and it might not be right, but like I think this is what we're seeing a little bit in Potchfin, a little bit in other places, is that overall the Drifter Crisis was effective at getting people interested in playing the game again. And then as the Drifter Crisis wound to a halt, those people went and did different activities. And because the Drifter Crisis got people to kind of engage deeper into the game, people are trying out harder things. I know that like this is very true within our group. We have a bunch of new, like relatively newer players and more experienced players that would have normally have spent their days mining or ratting or, you know, one of the more basic activities that are now doing crazier things like escalations, wormhole, Triglavian wormhole farming, you know, whatever, because, you know, they've been encouraged to step it up a notch and they're stepping up to the plate. So I think that that's what we're seeing is that a lot of the more dangerous but lucrative activities, a lot of the on the higher up on the high risk, high reward scale are now being performed by people because like their risk aversion has been suppressed and their interest in doing things and making money in the game has been increased by things like tourism fleets, running the Drifter Crisis stuff and all of the different things happening during events and stuff. So could very well be. That's my theory. Let me know what you think. Let's see. We can see here that ISKs and faucets over time. Commodities have overall been relatively flat. Sancha's incursions are on a downswing, but it's pretty normal up and down. Triglavian invasions are definitely being pushed up a little bit. Bounty prizes, we can see, once again, hold on, let's go ahead and look at major update was January, February, March. So if we go here, January, April, March, April. So what we can see is that bounty prizes dip off as soon as that update happens, and it remains kind of flat at that level. We also, here's a good one. Here's an interesting one to look at. Look at this spike in skills and blueprints. This is, I really, hold on a second. Here's Eve Offline, which is kind of the status monitor. So let's look at the last 3 months. Yeah, I mean, it feels like we have a higher overall activity in the game in the last few months. But what I find interesting here is, look at this spike in people buying things from the LP store and a spike in people buying skills and blueprints. This is very interesting to me. I'm not sure about the the broker's fees and the transaction tasks. I know that they've been messing with some of those numbers, so I don't know how much I'm going to look into those numbers. But like, people are buying new skills and new blueprints, and people are spending LP. LP normally comes from like, especially comes from faction warfare and such. So I just feel like this represents an increase in overall people getting ready to do stuff and people doing stuff. People made money in the event and now spending. That's a good point. But I also think that like there's a certain amount of, and this might just be the bias of our organization, but it feels like we've had a lot of newer players come in, and because a lot of the activities and stuff that are happening are relatively new player friendly, these new players are getting sucked up into what's happening, and they're getting money for it, right? 100% the Sarathiel. I wouldn't call it 100% the Sarathiel, but that's definitely going to be a contributor. Yeah. All of these spikes are happening at the same time. Is that the expansion? That's probably the day of the expansion. So yeah, it's like it could very well be a lot of people trying to get the Sarathiel, trying to get the Babaraga, trying to get the skills to fly those things, etc., etc. But I think that a large portion of this is like when you start seeing like a big increase in the amount of people buying skills, that tells me that it's newer players often. Oh yeah, also reduced LP costs for other. So it's across the board. All of the Pirate Dreads probably got sold a lot during that time. But I'm mostly interested in this skill and blueprint increase because, again, that tells me that newer players are now, as Malin pointed out, spending their money. So they got sucked into stuff. They've been able to engage with the game on a pretty high level for their skill points, and now they are trying to quickly catch up with everybody else by getting the correct skills and everything that they need. We'll see if that actually holds true. Money supply. Interestingly enough, money supply, with all of that additional ratting, with all that additional stuff, the money supply itself hasn't changed much. It's almost flattened out, both for character and corporation has been flattened out for a little while. Not sure. One thing that is actually fun in all of this, there is a new cost. There is a new cost. Are they actually talking about it here? Hold on. Ooh, here's actually a good one. Skills on the market went from 10 trillion to 12 trillion. So 20% increase in skills being bought in the last month. But here's an interesting one. I don't think they have... I wonder if they have the freelancer job costs. I don't see it here. Advertisement listing fee. No, that's probably for the actual... That's probably for, like, corp ads. Bounty surcharge. What the... okay. I'm not seeing it. Maybe people got lazy and started clicking buy and inject. Maybe. Yeah, I don't see like the listing fees. I wonder, because like everything we see here, it looks like there should be an increase in money overall, but we don't see an increase in money overall. So obviously ISK is flowing out of the system to compensate for that. But yeah, overall values are actually pretty flat right now. Velocity of ISK, however, is still ticking a little bit up. It's as high as it was. It's at its highest point since 2020, right? So if for all of the people who pointed out that like scarcity destroyed ISK velocity. First of all, ISK velocity was dropping before scarcity happened, but now we've actually entered a ISK velocity of pre-scarcity era. So that's cool. That's good. And then, and honestly, one of the things that we can see is a lot of it is people buying skill injectors, which that's another piece of all of this that we haven't really factored in, which is that there's been a lot of weird sales when it comes to Plex and skill injectors, etc., including 7 free days of Omega, which I don't know if that's going to be included in this particular. It'd only be at the very, very end. But feels like more sales than ever. Yes and no. I mean, to a certain extent, probably. But also, I mean, FanFest is and Eve's anniversary is always a good time for sales. Probably one of the best times of the year, except for Christmas. MPI, we can see it is still way lower than it was at its highest spike. It's down to its 2024 levels. It's actually to about what it was when scarcity hit, right? So the mineral prices are going down, and that's also pushing down the producer index. So remember when I was talking about how, like, well, if everything's now 40% more expensive, then that explains it. Well, this shows you that no, not everything is 40% more expensive in the last year. So that ain't it. It's just way more production happening. Mineral or indices since 2018. Again, basically, things are now at their scarcity levels of mineral prices, which admittedly, like, the mineral price index should, in a very healthy system, eventually go down a little bit more. One thing that's worth remembering is that this mineral prices here was super suppressed. This was the reign of the Roke Wall. This was when mineral prices were so cheap that it was actually becoming a problem, because Roke Walls were able to mine so much that, like, newer players trying to mine in high sec were completely overwhelmed, like it wasn't worth it as much because so much of the material that was needed in the universe was being mined by Roke Walls and stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure if we might not get. I don't think we're going to get. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't think we're going to get to the missile stuff today. We might have to do that another day, because we still have to go through the MER or finish through the MER, which we're almost done. But then also talk about the patch notes for Eve Galaxy, Eve Frontiers. Consumer price index. Drake is sad. We might. I looked at the volume by region for May 2018. It was all mined in Delve. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Can you link that to me, Malik, and I'll pull it up? So we can see that Tech 1 modules have gone up a little bit, which is kind of funny. Tech 2... Wait, hold on. Sorry, Tech 1 ships. No, hold on. Let us go like this. Go across. Yeah, so Tech 1 ships are a little bit cheaper. Tech 1 modules are actually a little bit more expensive. Tech 1 modules have gone up. I assume that's because people are building Tech 2 modules. However, Tech 2 modules have gone down. So here's May 2018. We can see, yep, There you go. That's what a healthy game looks like right there. There's your healthy mining numbers. This when people talk about the reign of the roque wall and people talk about wanting to go back to the reign of the roque wall and people want to go back to cheap stuff, realize that this is what they're talking about. That's ridiculous. That's one group producing the vast majority of all of the wealth in the entire game. That was the problem. I don't have a problem with the goons existing and being a powerhouse and being the people who are winning the game or whatever. But they had completely crowded out everyone else. Yeah. Yeah, this is not a statistical anomaly of 2018, okay? So that's a great point. Thank you for pointing that out. Like, these numbers, these aggregate numbers don't always show the full picture, but, like, that's why all of this happened. Let's see. Everything else is kind of not shifting too much when it came to the consumer price index. Mineral price index. Here we go. Check this out. High-end materials have gone down, and low-end minerals have gone up. Imagine that. That's exactly what the update was supposed to do. Whenever people cry about scarcity, I refer to the 2022 FanFest keynote about 40-ish minutes in. Is that when he talks about the reign of the roque wall? No anomaly, it was done on purpose. No, usually they use roque walls. All right. So yeah, right now, low-end minerals have been going up quite a bit and have been going up a lot this last year, whereas low-end or high-end minerals have gone up and then started to crash now that nullsec has gone active again. Yeah, how many caps they produce per day. Yeah. Hold on. Delve time unit. This was propaganda in 2021. Okay. So in 1 hour, Delve would produce 3.5 billion ISK. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So they do a fully fit Nix every hour? A Titan every 30 hours? Now, admittedly, a fully fit Nix was a lot cheaper. Wait, those numbers don't work, right? Look, this is propaganda for the record, but like it does point out how ridiculous things were at the time. I don't think these numbers are 100% accurate, but still, point. All right, next, primary producer index. Raw moon materials have gone down in value. Does that make sense? That's actually kind of surprising to me. Because, oh, hold on. Let me just make this like this. This is kind of surprising to me because with all the stuff with metanoxes, you would think that less people would be using metanox. Wait, yeah. So less people are drilling with metanoxes, which means more people are mining the moon minerals. So there's more raw moon materials, which drives the price down. But there's also less processed moon materials. That didn't make that much of a change. 4 billion is super. Yours was 9 billion in 2019. Whoo-wee. Now that's a carrier. Well, 4, not 9. Let's see. ICE hasn't changed that much. Commodity has gone down. Why commodities change price is beyond me, given the fact that it's mostly NPCs. Oops. Let's see. Asteroids have gone up. That makes sense. Advanced moon materials have gone up a little bit. Secondary producer price. Anything big that stands out? Accessories has gone down. I think that's Plex stuff. Plex related stuff. In fact, let's check on the price of Plex while we're here. Oops. I mean, it's kind of stabilized a little bit from what it was a few months ago. But it's like 6.23 now. And it was, eesh, it still has gone up quite a bit in the last year. That's for sure. From 5 million to 6 million every time there's a Nest sale, Plex shoots up. Yeah, and for some reason when they sell Plex, it doesn't necessarily go back down. But yeah, so Plex has gone from 5 million to 6 million in the last year and remains above 6.2. Ship and module price indexes. So modules have shot up in January, but has remained relatively flat since. Ships have actually gone down. Now, a lot of that's going to just be from, like, they made battleships cheaper. They made some capital stuff cheaper, I believe. So that, you know, a lot of this ship drop is going to straight up just be like, so they made battleships cheaper. So more people are using battleships. More people are using more expensive modules on their battleships. Cost of modules go up. Cost of ships go down. That feels related to me. Wormholes. Always a weird one to check out, but let's see what we can figure out. What we're seeing is blue loot, gas. I'm looking a lot of the gas stuff. So we have 1 trillion is the high with 1.9 for class 5. If we go here, we see 1.2 and 0.9. So a lot of increases in the class 3 wormhole. 0.3, 0.3, yeah. That's interesting. It's weird that, like, we don't see as much of a change in... In fact, we see a reduction in class 6. What do the numbers here mean? Hold on. I guess that would be... Is that imports? So more is being brought into class 4s? Probably people going from class 4s to Huff in class 5s and class 3s and then return back to class 4? Maybe? I don't know. Not a wormholer, by the way. And that's it. That's your monthly economic report, I believe. Biggest battles of the by solar system. We've got a big yellow one and a big red one, or a green one for your faction warfare. Yeah. That is it for your monthly economic report for April. No. May 2025. If there's anything that you guys, any thoughts, questions, did I get anything else wrong? Do you have any theories about stuff, anything that we should be paying attention to next month, etc., please let me know in the comments below. But with all that said, for those of you who are watching live, continue to watch. But if you're watching this recorded, I've been Asherothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. We'll see if that turns into a segment. I don't know. Woo! All right. Oof. The other thing we want to talk about today is about tomorrow. Tomorrow is a big fucking day, okay? Eve Frontiers is unironically a pretty good game. Okay, I'm going to start with that. I know there's been a lot of hate. There's been a lot of consternation. There's been a lot of just hate thrown at eFrontiers for a while, given its use of the blockchain as a backing system. However, controversy. Yeah, there you go. However, I want to start by saying that having monitored this for a while, there are quite a few people who are playing eFrontiers and are really into it and are finding a lot of fun and excitement, even in the state that it's in right now, which is admittedly fairly early, but still, you know, pretty good. Now, a lot of people are Eve fans that have come over to check out eFrontier, but there also is a lot of people that have been coming into it from other places, including the crypto world, that are wanting to check this out. It does offer a slightly different sales pitch than EVE Online, and so people are able to check it out. Yes, it is still going to be in an alpha. You can see here it's 0.1.1. It's still going to be founder access. So I assume that you're still going to have to pay the founder access in order to get into it tomorrow. So just full disclosure, you can the cheapest one is a $40 pack to be able to get into it. By the way, if you do want to get into it, I should have a code down below. Let me double check that. Yeah. It says jump into eFrontiers with my referral code. No, I can't tell you about it. And I give a referral code. The good news is, starting tomorrow, I will be able to tell you about it. And I'll be able to stream it live. Now, I know that they did release a bunch of, they loosened the NDA pretty significantly a while ago. No, Malik, Neverwinter Nights was... So Neverwinter Nights was actually originally it was originally a MUD. I played it. So fun fact, Neverwinter Nights is the reason why my dad had a $200 phone bill in the 90s, or AOL bill in the 90s, because they charged you by the minute back then. And I got really into Neverwinter Nights. Yeah. No, it's true. It was an AOL game. So, either way, this ain't that. No. Hold on a second. Let me pull up. I'm not going to play this with music because I'm going to play this muted because I don't want to be copyrighted today. I just don't want to deal with it. But we'll be able to see some of the visuals. So eFrontiers, like, I've been frustrated at eFrontiers because because of the NDA, to be frank. Because the problem is that it has allowed people to say whatever the hell they want about the game and not actually, like, the people who know the game and people that play the game weren't allowed to talk about the game. So the only people really talking about the game were either crypto nerds that were pouring through the white paper in order to figure out what CCP was saying about the game, or haters who were just saying whatever the hell they wanted to about it. Okay? So thankfully tomorrow I will be able to show you guys eFrontiers for the very first time. And what's even cooler is that there are going to be a lot of big changes happening. So there's going to be a lot of trying to figure out what the hell's going on my behalf as well. So a lot of, basically, I've said since the beginning, if there's any threat, if there's any nightmare scenario for eFrontiers, it's that eFrontiers very much risks becoming EVE 2.0. right? Like it or not, this could be where we're going. There's a lot of things about Eve Frontiers that represent what CCP always wanted to do with Eve Online, but can't because their engine was too old, their player base too solidified, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things that, like, just technical things about that people have been wanting in Eve Online for quite some time that is in Eve Frontiers. And the other thing is, like I said, this is a very slightly different game. Like, it uses a lot of the same mechanics and understanding of things. But in Eve Online, you're playing a game where you are growing up in the shadows of well-established empires, right? There's high security space. There's the 4 core empires. There's pirate factions. There's bounty payments. Yeah, you already exist in a civilization, right? Eve Frontiers is a space colonization game, pure and simple. Nothing significant exists in the frontier at the moment besides ruins of previous civilizations. And those ruins can be utilized. You know, there are still stations and structures that can be used to manufacture stuff, but there isn't really stuff seeded on the market. There, by the way, this is huge. This thing right here is a single entity. This is the Moon Eater. It is a gigantic rogue drone, colossal ship that no one has killed yet. But so, like, the Frontiers really is about building your own space colony, right? And I think it's going to become even more so in the future. So, like, for instance, this picture here, all this stuff that's laid out, this is, I believe, 100, like, these are all player-built structures and such. Yeah, the only thing that exists in the universe besides us are feral rogue drones, effectively. So there are still some Stargates. There are still some stations, but they're few and far between, and a lot of the stuff requires players to actually build and develop. Now, the blockchain stuff, honestly, for most players, you should probably just forget about the blockchain. Like, the blockchain is as important to the average Eve Frontier player. Like, knowledge about the blockchain is as important to an average Eve Frontier player as is knowledge of how database structures work for Eve Online players. Like, you don't know that. Most of you, I guarantee you, have no idea what third normal form means. You just don't. And that's fine. You're not a database engineer, you know? So in the same way that you don't really care about how the database works in EVE Online, you don't actually need to care too much about how the blockchain works in EVE Frontiers. That could change a little bit, but basically the whole point of this is just realize that the blockchain is being used as a public ledger, a public database that powers the entire EVE Online or the EVE Frontiers kind of reality. So it's more of a technical hurdle than like a gimmick or anything like that. A big piece of this is you can see, like, there are tons and tons of star systems. There's several thousand star systems. So even though there is no security, the whole point is that you and your friends can find some place in space and create your own little home amongst the stars. But we'll be showing this off more tomorrow and talking about it more tomorrow. Let's look at the patch notes for tomorrow and see what we have to say. So, salutations, riders. So in EVE Frontiers, you're now called a rider, not a capsuleer. What about the 4NF? What about fourth normal form? Fourth normal form is it's good, but it's not necessarily a reasonable expectation for most databases. And that's just I'm not getting into it, okay? These people don't want to know about normal forms. I guarantee you. Nobody here that doesn't know about normal forms wants to hear about normal forms right now. So either way, okay. So, salutation writers. The following page will list patch notes for all updates within this release. Founder Access 0.1.1, titled Promised Lands. We invite you to join the player discussion about this content in the release. Fifth normal form. I think fifth normal form would be impossible, right? Hold on. Oh, no, never mind. It exists. A table is said to be in fifth normal form if and only if every non-trivial joint dependency of that table is implied in it by its candidate keys. I mean... Okay, sorry. I'm such a fucking computer nerd, dude. Like, when I was in school, my teacher called me a bulldog because I wrote out the database for our project for the year on the back of a napkin in third normal form, just over lunch by myself. So yeah, I'm that kind of nerd. All right. Either way, I digress. Entered a new era and cycle, now beginning the first cycle of the sixth era. So I think that means like the sixth major wipe. I've been part of several of the previous cycles, but either way. And then, as we read earlier, as of 1400 UTC on the 11th of June 2025, the eFrontier non-disclosure agreement will have been discontinued entirely. So tomorrow, we will be streaming eFrontiers. Features and changes. Heat. Now, this heat is not quite the same as in EVE Online. A new system enforces every energy conservation, introduces travel speed limits, and caps capacitor generation in high-temperature environments. So... one of the big things about EVE Frontiers is the idea of, well, first of all, heat and locations, right? So, like, if your ship is running hot, it'll be more detectable. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be in this part, but, like, the overall ambient heat will affect your ship's capabilities. And this is just one piece of the puzzle. Like, if you watch that video closely... you see, like, there's this whole segment of here where what's important here is that these ships are going through this area and they're scanning things, but they don't see this ship because it's not on, right? This is not something that can happen in EVE Online, right? If you're in a ship on grid, people just see you on the overview. There is no overview in EVE Frontiers. Things can actually be occluded. Things can be... yeah, get too close to the sun. Yeah, things can be, like, there's line of fire. If you jump behind a structure and then somebody shoots at you, they're going to hit the structure instead of you. Like, that all works in EVE Frontiers right now. Well, the line of sight stuff does work or the line of sight in shooting works. The line of sight in visibility, last I checked, doesn't work as well, but that might be something that's getting, that's being added. These are all pieces that they're working on already. So, tactical camera. There are two new modes which help the player navigate the universe. The TAC view, F2, which shows the abstract view of the grid, and the SIS view, F3, which lets you navigate the solar system. So this is something about the game right now that is kind of clunky, and they've been working on a new way of doing things. Third. Wait, what? Kind of tempted to get the founder access now, just not sure where to begin. Well, historically, like, what they've done is they allow you to pick a constellation, and then there are basic stations, so you can start to occupy that station and build stuff in that station. But we'll see. We'll find out how the reality of things are when we get there tomorrow. But so this is actually pretty interesting. Oh, got it. So this one is kind of interesting to me because, like, the navigation has been kind of clunky, where there's like a warp mode where you can see all of the stuff around you that you can warp to, and then there's kind of the more, I guess, tactical mode, which is showing you all of the stuff that's on grid with you that you can see, and you have to swap between those two. Looks like they're iterating on making that work nicer. So this is honestly probably the feature that I'm most interested in seeing, because it's kind of the how you play it on a moment to moment basis. You could figure it out as a Lone Ranger from a band of outlaws or create a temporary civilization. Never know. That's right. And we will be teaming up with Exotech Industrial. Malik, can you confirm that that you linked to me is public data? So now, graphics and updates, lighting and shading, new PBR shaders, metalness workflow, introduce physically based shaders supporting the metalness workflow for both organic and hard surface materials, delivering more realistic material responses under dynamic lighting. This is actually, okay, so PBR shading is, if you guys notice how in, like, before ray tracing, right, the biggest thing, like back in 2012, 2013, we see this sudden influx of realism in video games, even in like less polished video, like non-AAA games. Many of them come out with looking a lot better than previous, prior to 2013, 2014 time period. And that's because of the development. Okay, that chart is still NDA. Great, thank you. That is because of the development of what's called PBR, physics-based rendering, where basically there is a bunch of different properties of a material, including its roughness, its albedo, which is its color, and its metalness. These are all properties that are part of that material, and then it like uses those properties to manage the lighting systems to give you more realistic visuals, right? That's why we start to see like more realistic skin and more realistic buildings and materials, and why like it's very cheap now to make like a really good looking building in a video game. PBR shaders have done a lot for that, and so they are introducing that into eFrontiers. So that's going to be a big change in just like the visual fidelity of things, and also how quickly they can produce things of high visual fidelity, because PBR is actually a really easy workflow to work with in a lot of times. Either way, new PBR planet-based shaders, added specialized PBR shaders for planets, enabling more accurate light scattering, roughness response, and material definitions at planetary scales. Speculation it is, then? Well, I mean, I've worked with PBR quite a bit, and then ray trace shadows are coming. Alpha cutout support, transparent materials with cutouts now correctly cast ray trace shadows. Point light support, ray trace shadows are now available for point lights, enhancing volumetric lighting fidelity. So this game's going to look a lot prettier and have a lot of better lighting effects. This is the same stuff that they're working on bringing to EVE Online, don't worry. But because of the fact that they're kind of starting from the ground when it comes to eFrontiers, eFrontiers has been the place for them to develop and experiment with these kinds of more advanced visuals to then try to work into EVE Online. So we're going to see a lot more of what that's going to look like tomorrow. With volumetric shadows, point lights now cast volume shadows, including improving the perception of depth in dust-filled scenes. So now if you have like a light on your front of your ship and it's dusty, you'll be able to like see it in the dust, which is pretty cool. Yeah, eFrontiers is the testing bed for a lot of really cool stuff. Do you think that EVE Online will get an increased tick rate similar to EF? I just don't. I mean, a lot of things have happened to EVE Online that I never thought was going to happen to EVE Online, because I thought that they were too fundamental to be changed. So don't take this to be like, oh, it's not going to happen. But like, there is so much, well, on the one hand, it's literally just reverse tie-dye. And CCP has proven that they can do reverse tie-dye in things like Alliance Tournament. But at the same time, even in the Alliance tournament, when they go into reverse tie-dye, some really weird things happen. And so I think that they probably could. I thought they talked about the tick rate changing in EVE during FanFest. Well, so CSSU command says, I want to say maybe, but I don't know when a big battle would commence by then. So here's the thing about that. Here's the kicker behind that. You could increase the tick rate and then just also increase the amount that tie-dye can reduce things to. So, like, because remember, tie-dye just kind of basically lengthens the tick time in order to make it so it compensates for it. So if you did reduce the tick rate, you would actually hit tie-dye sooner. But in theory, tie-dye could stretch as long as it does now before the entire system begins to break down like it does now. So it would increase the tick rate during its like optimal time, but still be allowed to degrade from there, I would say. The biggest question is whether or not they would get any value out of that development, you know, and I think that the biggest argument for increasing the tick time in EVE, which just so that everybody's aware what we're talking about here, in EVE, everything happens on a 1 second tick, right? So every second it takes in all of the stuff that's happened in that second, does its math, and then sends back out the update to people on what's going on. The biggest symptom of this, though, is that the client always feels sluggish, right? Where if you double click in space or, you know, or you try to turn off a module or whatever, like there's sometimes, or it feels like things are pretty laggy, right? You'll double click and then like a half a second later, then it'll start to turn. Or, you know, the module shut off, but it still cycles half a cycle before it fully like shuts off. And the reason why is because things actually only happen once a second. You know, EVE is a turn-based strategy game where every turn takes 1 second, and if you don't take an action within that second, you pass your turn automatically, right? And then everything's calculated. So a higher tick rate, the most value of a higher tick rate would just make it so that the client would feel snappier. There's other ways to make it so that the client feels snappier without causing extra stuff on the back end. Yeah, AU players would just now be 2 ticks behind the rest of the fleet instead of 1. That's correct. But again, like this doesn't necessarily speed up how fast anything is happening. You're not going to cycle faster. You're not going to enter warp faster. Although it could theoretically. That's another big thing, is that it would disrupt things like the 2 second tick alignment time. Like that, it would be actually like, that would be the biggest change when it comes to a faster tick rate, which would be that like pretty much every uncatchable ship would now be catchable in theory. Because like the uncatchability of ships is largely based on the speed of the 1 second tick time. Reverse tie-dye should be adjusted if there's a big battle going on to balance the lag and number of ships, theoretically. That doesn't... Tie-dye is required to keep the battle stable during a big battle, so reverse tie-dye would be the opposite of what you would want. Maybe they'll fix gates so that they're harder to camp within slot garbage, but that's, like... That's messing with the sandbox. You don't want to just like arbitrarily be like, nah, you can't do that anymore. I think that like this is one of those things that I believe personally that the game is far too deep into its own rules to change this easily. And so the details of it would, you know, the devil would definitely be in the details with all of that. Yeah, but EVE Frontiers being built from the ground up, they don't have to worry about all of these different weird rules, you know, like there is no such thing, like there's not this big concept of uncatchable ships in EVE Frontiers. Unless reverse tie-dye is weaponized, that's a no-no on my end. Well, no, the idea would be like, so now, instead of a tick every second, it's a tick every half a second. So the game updates its state every second and a half. So then you would have to have a 1 second align time instead of a 2 second align time, because theoretically, if somebody has a half second lock time, they could have you locked in the first tick and then scrammed by the second tick, which would be at that point 1 second instead of 2 seconds. I'd rather fights happen at the content, not the EVE equivalent of spawn point for the system. I mean, fights do happen at the content, but also, like, choke points aren't important. Every half a second would matter. Well, like I said, like, it would literally make it so that uncatchable, because basically the uncatchability of ships in EVE Online is dependent. If a ship warps before the second tick, it is uncatchable, right? That is how that rule actually works, right? Because the first tick, they at the end of the first tick, they see you. At the end of the second tick, they can lock you and start the scram, but by that point, you're already warped. So it's not 2 seconds as a hard, fast rule as to what makes you uncatchable. It's 2 ticks that are the hard, fast rule that makes you uncatchable. So in theory, if somebody could get their lock time fast enough, then if the tick was half a second, then you'd have to be at 1 second to be uncatchable instead of 2 seconds to be uncatchable. Now, there is something to be asked about the question of, like, is uncatchability good? You could theoretically just get used to a world in which uncatchability isn't a thing, but that's a very different game. And we could adjust, but I think that you would see a giant suppression of content in low sec. Speaking of ray tracing, for example, there's a big derelict structure, big enough to hide a fleet on one side of the structure. Would you, a lone ship, be able to see the fleet? So in EVE Frontiers, eventually, you being the lone ship should be able to hide behind the structure and not be able to see the enemy fleet. However, and this goes back to that heat thing, if you had sufficient heat on if your ship was online with all of its modules running, it could very well be that the enemy fleet could detect you based on the heat that your ship is putting off by consuming all of your fuel. Likewise, you would be able to see the enemy fleet because they're going to collectively be producing a lot of heat. Is it even feasible to speed up server ticks for a massive single-sharded universe? Absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing as slowing down ticks, but opposite. They did it, like, CCP did reverse tie-dye during Alliance tournaments, like I said, and that's done on Tranquility. That's a live server. Yeah, running Silent in EVE Dangerous is going to be a thing in EVE Frontiers. I don't think it's going to be a thing tomorrow. Wait, it's feasible? It exists? You can't... as far as I know, if you are behind a structure, if there's a structure, well, maybe if the structure is big enough, is it true that, like, so there's stations. Stations are huge. If somebody's on the opposite side of the station, I think right now you can still see that they're there. I know that's true with asteroids. Maybe that's what it is. Is it the temporary things like asteroids are being able to be seen through right now? Oh. Got it. Well, again, like, they're not speeding it up for EVE Frontiers. They're just always making it that way. Like, it's always, now with EVE Frontiers, it's always been that way, which is nice. But, yeah, I can't remember, like, if somebody's on the opposite side of a major structure, can you see them right now? But the goal is eventually you wouldn't. We can look into this stuff tomorrow. All right. Texturing material and fidelity, enhanced texturing methods for material inputs, introduced a new texturing technique aimed at increasing effective textile density and material detail fidelity across assets. Again, this is all just like, they basically just have a new visual pipeline. all of these things, all of these notes are really the same thing, which is that they have a new graphics pipeline, which is cool. Actually, all of this stuff so far, everything we've read so far is basically just we have a new graphics engine, more or less, or we've updated our graphics engine. Ambient occlusion, SSAO system overhaul, replace the previous SSAO implementation with a new method that significantly improves quality, precision, and stability of ambient shadows. Hey, thank you for that. 2 hours late. Yeah, we went over the Eve, the economic report, monthly economic report, and now we're just looking at the patch notes for tomorrow. I don't know about you guys, but I still have to play on optimized memory even in 300-player PvP. So that's a separate issue, right? There's the server's calculation in their load based on the amount of people that are doing things on the server in the system at any given time. And then there's your computer's ability to render all those graphics, right? And so things like LOD and, whatnot are going to be the secret to making your client be able to render all of those ships and stuff happening. But like that's a separate consideration from the server having to make all of the calculations. Either way. So SSAO, ambient occlusion is like when two things are touching each other, there's a natural shadow in that little gap, right? This is green. This isn't going to work. I mean, this is not... I'm not going to be... I don't know. Like, when two things touch... Hold on. Here is a scene with only the ambient occlusion being shown. And so you can see that kind of where things are touching or interacting with each other, that is where the ambient occlusion gets shown. So like a scene without ambient occlusion looks a lot flatter than one with ambient occlusion. And mind you, CCP already has ambient occlusion. They're just giving a better engine for it. Last night I had some crazy stuff going on. The jump gate and stations turned into spaghetti, like they exploded into lines. That usually happens like with a graphics engine when the actual model gets messed up, and so you just get like triangles in all directions. All right. Post-processing, ACES color grading pipeline. Upgrade the post-processing stack to include ACES-based tone mapping and color grading. I actually don't know that one. What is ACES tone mapping? A higher contrast tone mapper than neutral and has a greater effect on color, hue, and saturation. So more vibrant post-processing effects. New bloom implementation. Integrated a completely new multi-step bloom pass for more natural highlight effects. Cool. Better lighting. Background and scene rendering. New background generation pipeline for HDR lighting in the scene. Again, basically just new graphics and lighting engine or pipeline. Fully upgraded the background rendering to support scene-specific HDR settings. Artists can now tune intensity, hue, and masking on a per-scene basis, enabling dynamic environmental control and better visual balance. What this really does is it makes it so that different systems appear differently. Like, there'll be like areas that have a red tint to everything, or a green tint or whatever. And so it allows them to give different areas of space different feel, right? So like Uh, so this image, right? This image looks one way, and oh my God. This image looks very different, right? It's not just the lighting, although there is, I mean, like it is a lot of the lighting, but like there's a whole different tone to the colors being used in these two different systems or these two different pictures. And that's a lot of what they're talking about. All right. We also have 4 new ship models. The Reaver, a light combat vessel focusing on tanking and over pure firepower. The Reflex, a light exploration and travel-oriented vessel for quickly and cheaply traversing regions of space. I bet this is designed to replace the Explorer one. The Recurve, a light combat vessel focused on firepower over armor. And the Wend, starting ship that can perform basic tasks like mining and exploration, but whose capabilities are limited. Yeah, like the green effects in the Matrix. Really, almost every movie uses tone mapping. Dynamic music system. The new dynamic music system, driven by a wide range of parameters, brings distinct identity to each region of space. One of the interesting things about EVE Frontiers is realize that the regions of space are a lot more fluid than in EVE Online. Not only is not most of the systems not connected by stargates, but the systems themselves move over time. Like the entire star system moves based on the physics of the universe. So, you know, yeah, either way. Terminal and UI update to the UI and terminal. All interaction special effects revisited. World objects, atmosphere, and special effects for a range of new deployable assets. Spatial audio mix. Spatial audio is enabled to work with a variety of endpoints, improving positional accuracy and increasing immersion in the universe. So somebody shooting at you from the left, you hear it from the left. Tactical and system view, weapon and ship attenuation and special effects upgrades to differentiate between the cinematic experience or traditional view of the tactical precision with the new tactical and system modes. That's right. There actually is a very cinematic camera mode in EVE Frontiers. All right, new player experience. The new player experience update, Frontiers MPE now features a set of starting sites and systems that introduce the core concepts of fuel, salvaging, and mining to the player. The MPE has been balanced to provide a challenging experience, true to the Frontiers nature. The number of starting sites has been reduced to 3. That's actually pretty cool. It's so in EVE Frontiers, it's been kind of a joke that it's like, welcome to EVE Frontiers. Step 1, kill yourself. Because you start out away from your main station, but then you have to destroy, or you start out away from your main station, but you need a station to progress past a certain point. So if you decide to work on where you start, you eventually will have to pack up everything or just abandon it and move to the station. So it's good to just, first step, commit suicide and go back to the station. Oh boy, I shouldn't have said that. Pod yourself. It's not podding. Self-destruct your ship. There we go. Consider becoming a supporter. No. Either way, so so now they're going to create a better new player experience, hopefully, that makes it so that one of my biggest problems with Frontiers, full stop, right now is how much reliance there are on the main stations. So anything that makes it so that we don't actually have to live in the main stations and can actually build our own colonies out in space and build our ships there, I'm down behind. Also, I wonder how much of this is salvaging, means what we think of as salvaging with like a salvager, because that doesn't exist in EVE Frontiers as far as I know. How much of this is just like picking through remains, like looting as a word for salvaging, or, you know, using those two words interchangeably. We'll see. Ship catalog. Ship and module update. Ships and modules have gone through the balancing pass. The following ships have been added to the experience. The Keep set, Enclave set, and Proto Clan set. So we have the Wend, Reflex, Recurve, and Reaver updated models. The exclave set is the MCF, HAF, Tades, LoRa, and USF placeholder models. Protoclan set, Chumok, placeholder. I don't know what any of this means. Although I do know that so like exclaves and proto, like these are all parts of the ancient races. They're like the ancient remains that we finding. Sites. The following types of sites have been added to the frontier: 10 standard sites, crumbling Manning flat platform, unmoored silo block, ruined inculcator, inculcator wreckage, raised inculcator, shipyard ruins, shipyard archive wreckage, destroyed shipyard, rift 0633 and rift 0020. Rifts are where you get fuel. One generative site, inculcator foundation. I don't know what a generative site is. And one static site, a shipyard. So the shipyard is going to be, I assume a static site means that it's there and it stays there. Lagrange points and Stargate sites. Multiple dungeons have been repurposed to provide a set dressing and line of sight functionality at L points and Stargates. Coverage includes Lagrange points and Stargates. Base building can be performed at Lagrange points within these sites. Provides additional opportunities for Stargates to lay in wait for passerbys or escape those trying to hunt you. So what they're saying is that, like, one of the problems that currently existed in EVE Frontiers is, like, there's no bookmarks. So making your home out in space, like if you go to a mining site and then you drop like a refinery there and you start doing your mining and then you leave and that site despawns because you finished it, you're never finding that your refinery that you put down ever again. It's just gone now. There's no way to get it. So people had to build their sites at specific planets or at specific moons or blah, 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 in order to be able to know where to go to get it. So now it sounds like they're adding, or they're putting in these Lagrange points, and they're putting in some interesting stuff in those sites so that you can choose one of them to be your construction area, but also to add a little bit more interest in around Stargates so people can hide in ambush or try to run away by dunking behind stuff. Cool. Smart assemblies. No, smart assemblies are the way that we build things in Frontiers. They are the stuff that's tied to the blockchain because it's the public database. And they can be everything from Stargates to quest givers to trade houses. Build update mode. Build mode has been revamped with a new UI and improved overall UX. With the addition of new fuel and industry system, non-portable assemblies can now only be built at a Lagrange point. Oh, okay. Adding to the strategic aspect of the frontier. So you can't just drop a refinery or whatever necessarily at some mining beacon. New assemblies. A set of new assemblies have been added. The network node used to establish your base and fuel structures must be placed in an unclaimed L point. Printers capable of different scales of industry services, medium and small-sized assemblies added. Refineries capable of mineral extraction, medium and large-sized assemblies added. Shipyards. Build different types of ships. Small, medium, and large-sized assemblies added. Done. I love it. Frontiers is perfect. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine, guys. They got it. We're good. Perfect is a big word, but that's it. That's the patch note I've been looking for. Small storage unit, small programmable storage unit, hangars, ship storage, medium and large size assemblies added, totems, decorative places, 2 types added, walls, physical obstructions for defensive purposes, 2 types added, removed assemblies, the sepulture and hedgehog having been removed from the build set as new assemblies fulfill their original purpose. So for those of you who don't know, the hedgehog is, I'm sure I saw them in one of these pictures. Because they're shooting at one, right? Yeah. So you see this little triangular thing here that's being shot at, or like the bullets are going towards, that just got hit by it? That is a hedgehog. And they're literally just like this big blocky thing in space for you to hide behind. So they're saying that they're putting in a more robust wall system, so the old ones are going away. That makes sense. Station updates. Industry has been removed from stations to encourage base building across the player base. This is it, guys. The frontier is the frontier now. No longer are we going to be fighting over individual stations because there's 4 stations that are the most important places in the entire game. Now it's literally about building your fucking space out in the middle of nowhere. That is so cool. So cool. Universe updates. Universe updates. Multiple updates pertaining to the culture and history of the frontier, celestial generation, and distribution of the... I am actually... My excitement for tomorrow has skyrocketed in the last, like, 10 minutes. I'm not... Like, I want to stress something. CCP has never paid me a goddamn penny to say anything positive about Frontiers. Ever. They've never even suggested to me to say anything positive about Frontiers. So nobody has ever asked me to, or like has done anything to try to entice me to say something positive about eFrontiers through like monetary or whatever needs. I am legitimately very excited about what this could mean for like just going out and like EVE Online is really cool in the fact that like taking part in this incredibly complex web of economics and power and the history and all that stuff. But like I was a big fan of Firefly, guys. The idea of just going out into the black and making your own little home and building it up with your friends. God, this sounds cool. All right. Sorry. Names are now based on history in addition to extinct civilizations' preferences. Extinct civilizations have now been exposed to the map. Don't know what the fuck that means. Celestial generations, attributes for the distribution of stars, planets, and moons have now been calculated differently and more realistically. What are your thoughts on alts multiboxing viability on Frontier? They actually, so the thing is, because of fuel, multiboxing doesn't necessarily matter. Like, this is a big piece of what's talked about in the white paper, where I went over the white paper in the major, or in a couple of videos. But like a big part of the economics or the underlying foundations of Frontiers is their attempt to fix some of the fundamental problems that they can't fix in EVE Online. And so things like fuel and heat and all that stuff makes it so that like it kind of doesn't matter if you can multi-box, because there's still cost to everything, right? In EVE, if I have 50 accounts and I get them all a VNI, well, now I can rat with all of them for as long as I want and produce 50 times as much money, with the only cost being if I lose a VNI, which technically speaking, that's the same. Like, I'm not going to lose all 50 VNIs at the same time. So I just have a cost of replacing VNIs when I lose one, and I can just rat with all 50 VNIs at the same time. I know I'm saying VNI, even though it hasn't been VNIs for like a decade. Leave me alone. Don't at me. But my point remains that like when we talk about multi-boxing in EVE, the concern is the idea that, you know, you're able to magnify your agency by that. With EVE Frontiers, if you want to play as multiple people, you can, but multiple people has multiple costs, has multiple consideration. You could theoretically build your own little empire with your own network of people, but like you're still going to have to do everything. Is there any reinforcement or temporary protection cycle for player structures? I don't think so. I don't believe so. No, it's a rough world out there. Now, what's the protection for the protection is that there's 5,000 star systems, and people are going to have to find your particular little home. There's no directional scan. There's no map that tells you where activity's being done. There's nothing. Somebody has to actually find your place to go and blow it up. Now, granted, actually, I'm actually incorrect. That was a total lie, because there are certain things that are publicly available on the blockchain. Because the stuff is registered on the blockchain, people can actually use that to find people's facilities. So, for instance, if you build a Stargate, then anybody can find that Stargate, because it's in the public ledger. So certain things can be found, but a lot of things can't. Site distribution, resource distribution, not uniform anymore. I thought it wasn't uniform, but like this is a big piece of like different areas of space have different values. Smaller rifts have been added, and the distribution between small and big rifts balanced. That's great. Rifts are always a pain in the ass to find. Oh yeah, we have 22,000 systems with over 100,000 planned. That's Brave. You're right. There is only so many places to hide. That's correct. So there's only 600,000 places in the universe to hide something. They'll find you eventually, I guess. Isn't it just a matter of figuring out what's the system and then warping around them? That I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying that it's like they're going to have to put in the work. And not to mention the fact that, remember, chances are, if you do it right, the only way to get into your area is either by the stargates that you control and can control who can go through them, or people using their jump drives to get in that way, which is very costly. So... And yeah, and every single time you go to one of those 500,000 planets, you're paying fuel every single time. New features for builders. World changes. Added a new abstraction layer called the Smart Object Framework for representing and managing on-chain entities and different relationships between those entities. Beyond entity management, the SOF also provides a system for scooping and extracting context tracking while maintaining security and clear permission boundaries across access control management. This is just a weird, like, a lot of this is just saying that, like, now you don't even have to worry about blockchain nearly as much, like, even as much, right? Like, there's now, they're adding in extraction layers so that way people that don't have coding experience, people that don't have blockchain experience will still be able to, like, add things and manage things in the game. World API changes. Added new endpoints for both static data and private data. Improved the existing endpoints with more data and added authentication for private data. And PODs. Added PODs for players to take advantage of zero-knowledge proofs with verifiable data from the server. More details here. What is this? Provable object data type. Okay, this is nerdy stuff. I don't know anything about that yet. All right, well, this is what's going to happen with Eve Frontiers tomorrow. I can know where somebody is in the middle of the ocean, but getting to you is a lot of effort. You can also set up your stuff on a gas giant 12th moon after burning 2 hours from the warp-in. Just make sure that you have lots of turrets, so you warp to your stuff, your guns aren't right on them. Yeah, but then you would also have to burn 2 hours from the warp-in. You can't set up a bookmark in the center of your area. Unless that's being added, which I don't see that in the patch notes. But yeah, I mean, like, that's part of the whole thing is that, yeah, players can interact with each other in a very free way. If somebody does want to invade your space, there is a reason why OPSEC is incredibly important now, and there's it is a much more treacherous game world than EVE Online is. That's true. But the thing is that what we've seen from earlier cycles is that it seems to work. Now, we'll see how well it works as, like, popularity grows. But as of right now, it does seem to work. Now, I do recommend you go back and watch my Eve Frontiers white paper videos, because the white paper is kind of their definition for what they want Eve Frontiers to be. And so there's a lot of really good information there. You warp to a moon, then something... Yes. Yeah. You warp to my area, and then all of my turrets just blap you out of the sky. That's true. All right, but I think it's already been almost 3 hours today. Starting the missile guide today seems like a big ask. So I do, and I need to go deal with real life stuff because, like I said, need to figure out how to pay bills. If you're interested in helping support the stream, thank you for all of you who consider that. You can become a member or a patron, but as of right now, this week, if you are interested, please hit me up in Discord or PayPal, ashtarothi@gmail.com. That'd be really helpful. I need to raise $150 in the next week in order to be able to pay my power bill. So I'm working on that. But, you know, I do thank everybody for being here and for watching the stuff. And if you like my streams and videos and all that stuff, please just continue to like it and share it around with other people, especially my new turret guide. I've gotten some really good positive feedback about that. But I always wanted to burn 30K in a direction acceleration gate facing just to test if I can circumvent gate restrictions. You can. And in faction warfare, that's actually been designated an exploit now because people did. Yeah. But also we've been doing more stuff as an organization. So if you're interested in playing with us in EVE and maximizing player engagement with EVE Online, go ahead and join the Convocation of Empyreans Discord. Even if you're not interested in joining us, you can go and hop in our Discord. We like to chat with people, hang out, answer questions, talk about stuff, EVE and other games, including EVE Frontiers. And if you haven't already, make sure to get your millions free skill points by using the link down below or in chat. It does help support those who support the stream. Yeah. So with all that said, I want to say thank you all for coming. I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for coming and checking out the stream, liking the stream and sharing it with your friends, and just hanging out and having a good time. I also want to thank Sheesh for your 5 gifted memberships, and all of you who have taken the option to support the stream, especially my immortal tier patrons, 745 MPSI, Erdenika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Eboleet, Erlidis, Alanje, Flash Gordon, May, Malik Starfire, Malin, Mercuton, Nihilum, LM1, Sheesh, and Rid. Thank you guys so much. Yep. And all that said, I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. And until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city